Every good story has a central theme that it is trying to convey. Some can portray a message of hope and deliverance, while others are a warning of the danger of our shortcomings. Movies like Blade Runner show us the crisis that comes with losing our humanity, or games such as Modern Warfare remind us that individual heroism isn't what saves the world when a flashpoint arises. The Last Tiger war story has its own message it's trying to convey, one I think that is rather admirable in the social and political climate of today. In this video, I want to investigate what exactly that message is. I'm not necessarily interested in talking about the gameplay, nor the collectibles, anything like that. That's been brought up to death. The purpose of this video is to analyze the war story like any other piece of art. Firstly, I want to give my brief opinion on the war stories in general. Overall, I've never found them particularly enjoyable. Single-player experiences in a Battlefield game have never been my cup of tea. They're usually dull in terms of both plot and gameplay, with the exception of the Bad Company games, and they don't usually add anything that's all that useful in my opinion. However, The Last Tiger war story has had me rather intrigued, not by its gameplay, but by its story and its characters, and the message that it conveys. Before getting into the themes of The Last Tiger, I want to talk about DICE's storytelling first, starting off with the characters. One aspect that I feel is missing in most war stories from Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, and previous Battlefield games is individual characterization. In Tirailleur, Nord-Elise, and Under No Flag, each character is completely one-dimensional and lack any qualities that really make them interesting, in my opinion. Not even the old guy in Under No Flag being voiced by Ghost from Modern Warfare can save his character.
Come over, fucking butcher. Give me the fucking money.
However, The Last Tiger puts each of these war stories to shame in just the second scene where we are introduced to all four of the Tiger crew. The first character introduced in this scene is Kurtz with a single line. He perfectly summarizes his worldview with a single sentence, and it leaves no surprise when he loses all faith in not only his crew, but his country. Just after him, we are introduced to what most resembles a protagonist, and the only true multidimensional character, Peter Müller. But he was already introduced in a previous scene, so we will get back to that later in the video. Next, Peter himself introduces Schroeder, who responds with a very formal yes sir before heading into the Tiger. One thing I want to really emphasize here is the dialogue. It's not amazing by any means, but it is very effective at letting us know each character's personalities. One of my favorite dialogue exchanges is actually in this scene, where Peter and Kurtz talk about Schroeder's uncanny loyalty.
Muss der dir eigentlich die ganze Zeit hinterherlaufen wie ein streunender Hund?
Ist noch ein Kind.
Dann hast du ihm ja bestimmt die Parteilinie erklärt.
Ich habe ihn nur daran erinnert, wer wir sind, Kerz.
These four lines really highlight the personal conflict that's about to unfold within Peter and his loyalty to the German Reich. The character I haven't brought up yet is Hartmann. He's very clearly a nervous wreck due to the fighting he's likely seen, and he has a very hard time hiding it. His shaking hands when he drops a shell casing give an impression that he may be suffering from some sort of post-traumatic stress. All of this is said with no dialogue, I might add, unless you want to count Hartmann introducing himself to Schroeder. On the topic of Schroeder, he was very clearly brought up under the wing of the Nazi ideology. He lives, he breathes, he speaks nothing but what he was told to live and breathe and speak by the party. In this story, he acts as a manifestation of the party itself, which is highlighted by the scene where he convinces Peter to send Hartmann out to investigate the surroundings.
Hier werden wir uns nicht lange halten können. Jemand muss da raus uns einen Weg suchen.
Schicken Sie Hartmann.
Wovon zur Hölle reden Sie da? Der Mann ist nicht in der Verfassung.
Vertrauen Sie auf unsere Stärke. Das waren doch eure Worte, oder? Keine Schwäche, keine Sentimentalitäten.
dort nochmal.
Sie sind so wichtig. Das können wir nicht riskieren. Und ich bediene das Geschütz.
Dann mache ich das eben.
Nein, Sie müssen fahren. Aber Hartmann, der ist doch eh angeschlagen. Austauschbar.
Wollen Sie ihn wirklich da rausschicken?
Hartmann!
Ja?
He highlights the weakness Hartman shows through his anxiety and hesitation, making him the scapegoat for their survival. Anyone with an understanding of World War II might find that logic familiar. It's very reminiscent of the Nazis' desire for strength through racial purity. Hartman shows weakness, therefore his life is expendable. He is just one of the many forms of scapegoats the party used to manipulate thoughts and feelings of its citizens. A little detail that really nails home Schroeder's manipulation is what he says to Peter at the start of this scene and at the end of The Last Tiger.
Sie auf unsere Stärke. Das waren doch eure Worte, oder? Aber es desertiert. Gemeinsam sind wir stärker, richtig? Die Schwachen überleben nicht. Das waren doch ihre Worte, oder? Sagen Sie es! War das nicht so?
What Peter actually said was this.
Gemeinsam sind wir stärker, vergessen Sie das nicht.
Throughout the scene, Kurtz protests against Schroeder, but he does nothing to stop him. He does not step outside the tank himself to protect Hartman. Neither does Peter. They appease Schroeder and listen to him, despite the moral wrongdoing they know they are committing. Kurtz is audibly defiant, but Peter questions himself privately. However, both are equally at fault. Dice's storytelling in The Last Tiger, as highlighted by two scenes I've put forth, is pretty well done, all things considered. My only gripe is that the dialogue and gameplay during the sections that hand you control over the tank do little to actually progress the story or Peter's character arc. Not to mention the gameplay is very repetitive and really buys into the 3 Shermans to kill a tiger kind of myth. Take that as you may. When in fact, Tiger 237 in this story is fighting an environment that it was really least suited for a forward assault in an urban city. However, that's a video for a different time and a different channel. But what does all this mean? Why do any of these details matter? And what can we take from them? Well, it leads to the central theme of the story itself, and it's told to you outright in the very first scene.
Als ich ein Kind war, wurde eine Gruppe von Jungs im Dorfladen beim Klauen erwischt. Mein Vater war außer sich, als er davon erfuhr. Aber ich hab doch gar nichts gestohlen. Vielleicht, sagte er. Aber du warst dort. Mein Name ist Peter Müller. Kommandant des Tigerpanzers 237. Und ich war dort.
The message of The Last Tiger, in its most basic form, is about who bears the responsibility when the world is in flames. Some would argue that the dictator in charge of the destruction is solely at fault. Others might argue that no one is to blame and that it was the natural course of history. But The Last Tiger says that all of us are at fault for the rise of specifically fascism in this case during World War II. The world stood by and watched as Germany turned away from democracy and began to conquer the world piece by piece. And many did nothing to stop them until it was too late. Peter only surrenders once he realizes he's lost everything. Only when his country collapses can he truly see through the veil that's been warping his view and manipulating his thoughts. Now, this theme is rather obvious considering it is quite literally brought up in the opening scene. So I want to elaborate more on the importance of the story, and at this point in the video, I want to bring up the catalyst for why I decided to record and upload this in the first place. Here is an AV Club article written by a man named Sam Barsanti. I have no ill will against Sam, and I do not want to use this time to criticize his article unfairly. But I do want to use it as a way to highlight and juxtapose what I believe is a deeper meaning that resonates in The Last Tiger. There are multiple things that I find very interesting about Sam's opinion on the story, the first being his view on Peter Muller. In this article it says, Muller never stops blindly following orders until the last second of the story, when it becomes clear that the German army has abandoned them. Then he goes on to say that he believes Muller's surrender is supposed to be an indictment of fascism, but claims in his opinion that the German soldiers that fought to the death like Schroeder are also revered just as equally as those who gave up like Peter. That both dying and surrendering for the horrible fascist cause are equally noble according to The Last Tiger. This is where I believe the article misses the mark. From my analysis of The Last Tiger, the fact Peter only surrenders when all hope is lost, I believe, is exactly the point. It is a warning that if fascism were to rise again, we would never be able to condemn it till we could see it for what it truly is: lies and deceit. Peter in this story is a victim who is manipulated by Nazis, just as many citizens in Germany were in real life. However, he is not blindly following orders. He questions himself on multiple occasions and knows what he's doing might be morally wrong. But he presses on because he can't see a way out. He will die if he deserts, just like Hartmann. And like I said before, Schroeder represents the manipulation that controls the population. With no hope left in the party, when he's the only good man left standing, Peter stops listening to Schroeder, therefore making him weak-minded, the next scapegoat to justify the destruction, just like Kurtz and just like Hartmann.
Bitte, Peter. Ich kann wirklich
Raus aus dem Panzer, Hartmann.
Ich möchte, dass Sie Ihre Pflicht tun.
Sam's article says in its final paragraph, and more specifically what ends up being his thesis statement, there may have well been German soldiers who were good people like Peter Muller, but it's hard to give a shit about that in 2018. Nazis are bad, and there are far too many people in the world who don't believe that. But once again, this completely throws out what The Last Tiger is trying to tell us. It's telling us that we should care about what happened to these people who fought in the German army, both good and bad. It's telling us that we should try understanding their motives and what led them to support such an awful system. Not that we should have empathy for them. That is up to opinion whether men like Kurtz, Peter, and Hartmann were doing something morally wrong and detestable, but that we should heed their warnings by observing their downfall. The last thing I have to say about The Last Tiger is there's one key detail I believe is incredibly important. The entire crew is killed, and it's all because of Schroeder. Every single character dies because of something Schroeder either says or does. He kills Hartmann when he convinces Peter to make him their scout. He kills Kurtz when he shoots him in the back for desertion. And lastly, he kills Peter when he removes his iron cross and surrenders. The party killed the crew, not themselves, not the Americans. Fascism is the destroyer of all things in The Last Tiger.